All right. All right. Greetings. Welcome back to Blackburn News, where everything is connected. How y'all doing? Yeah, I was getting besieged by some phone calls right when I was trying to start the show, which is fine. But luckily, or hopefully, it doesn't happen in the show during the show. I have a problem with people calling me. Nobody calls me all day long, but everybody calls me right in the middle of my show. Right? It just never. It never fails. So it's hard to. I don't know. I don't know how to really control that. All right, but lots of people here. Good to see you all. Some people on YouTube. Hey everybody, Human Love Solidarity. Got your message yesterday. Thank you for that. Some folks on Rockfin. Lots of folks on Rockfin. How you doing? Rockfanauts. Rockfanauts. Wherever you are, whether you're on Rockfin or YouTube, please like up the video. Remember to like the video if you like it. Or if you're here hanging out, give us a little digital love. And I guess good news for YouTube people. I usually cover a range of news, not just climate change, but there's so much to talk about in the climate change arena. Oh, we're also live on Callin, by the way, too. The Callin app. If anybody wants to hang out and listen on Callin or call in today, I'm live on Callin. There's so much climate change stuff or related stuff that I can't really even get to the other news. Earl Larson on YouTube says cooperation is always labeled socialism, right? Then Americans run faster than Josh Hawley, right? Yeah, it's a strange time. Everything's all mixed up. Everything's everywhere, and it's kind of leading to the misunderstanding of what's going on with climate change. Gene says no one talks about the climate crisis enough, so go to it, Kevin. Okay, that's what I'm trying to do. Yes, thank you, Gene. No one really talks about it, and no one really talks about it. I'm sorry, but it's been very painful this week listening to people that know much about climate change trying to talk about climate change. It's been a big subject this week for people in the independent media sphere. And I'm just like, oh God. I mean, some outlets maybe a little better than others, or some outlets with a little more I don't know, awareness perspective than others. But it's mostly painful. It's mostly painful. Max RJ, the climate always changing, sir. Right. Exactly. And that's a lot of what I'm seeing. Well, it's hot and in summer. That's what it's supposed to do. In summertime is be hot. Okay. There just isn't a lot of knowledge around it, and it's unfortunate. God, where to start? I don't even know where to start today. What I'm seeing a lot of too around and here's the thing is I don't I'm a person that's actually on the side of the people who are taking aim at the powers that be, right? I'm on the side of the people who want freedom. I'm on the side of the people who want bodily autonomy. I'm on the side of people who want, less social controls, on some level, but that doesn't mean less, to me, less regulation or less, there are some things we could do that would be my headphones equals hypocrite. Okay. But there are some things, I'm a hypocrite because I got plastic. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to read that. Obsolete optics. I'm going to read that Wired article in a second. The thing is that, yeah, go back to the socialism thing. There are things we can do collectively that would be better for the planet and better for, like good for the planet equals good for all beings on the planet, right? That includes human beings. That includes other beings. And there's just a big disconnect of philosophy, politics, and all that, and what really should be, what should be done in the face of any particular crisis. And I agree that some crises are engineered or not, you know, they're not really crises, but when it comes to the climate change thing, it is actually a crisis, um, and um, and people don't know what to do about it, or don't know how to think about it, and don't know which way to go. Case in point, the farmer uprising, the Dutch farmer uprising, which a lot of people are saying is also what happened in Sri Lanka, and it possibly happening in other places, as far as trying to put in controls around like nitrogen and how people farm and fertilizer. And here's the issue, that's where we get into the issue that we get to the issue where, climate change is politically almost impossible to fix, especially when you don't communicate well. And what we've done, what the powers that be have done for the last few decades is actually encourage the idea that climate change is debatable, that it's not really a thing. They actually changed the name from global warming to climate change in order to make it seem like, in order to kind of muddy up the waters around it. And nobody really knows what, there's a lot of people that are just very confused about what's going on. So we're trying to just unravel it day by day here. But anyways, to get back to the fertilizer thing and the nitrogen thing, right? Like, so we are, fertilizers and chemical fertilizers are bad for the planet. They deplete the soil. They run off into the ocean and into the lakes and the streams, and they do damage, right? They're not, on the long term, they're not the way to go. So certain countries are trying to implement these changes. And look, I don't agree with a lot of the things that a lot of governments are doing, but some countries are trying to implement some changes in order to address this issue, which is an issue. It's actually an issue, and it's something that we need to address. And maybe they're going about it the wrong way. I think they're going about it the wrong way. I think, well, the other problem is that when you try to do these things and address these issues, and you tell everybody, you don't actually address the issue of global warming or climate change or climate destruction or planetary destruction. You've been telling everybody this whole time, this is the way to go. We're always, the human species is always getting better, and this is how we get better through technology. And this is this technology, use this technology, and we're going to do, this medicine and these vaccines and this technology and these GMOs and these fertilizers and these chemical, right, all this stuff to make life better. And then one day you go like, well, no, those are actually making things worse. All of a sudden you do an about face. And you don't really give people a chance to adapt, and maybe you don't give people a chance to actually take in the information and process it in a way. Maybe the relaying of the information is all wrong. But we're going to, yes, in TCR, right. We're we're going to see more. We're going to see more confusion in the future. We're not less confusion. It's probably going to be much more confusion. And people are going to get emotional, and people are going to fight back like the farmers, and think there's going to be turmoil like Sri Lanka, and Choir Boy. That's a good comment on Rockfin. Choir Boy says we need to shout down the politics in favor of science. Thomas Massey told the Dems they're using political science, not physical science. Spot on. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Or not, political science as opposed to, or paid for science as opposed to actual science. And that's where everything is getting jumbled up. Everything's getting mixed up, right? You have a lot of people that understand that there's science that's being bought and sold. There's, regulatory agencies are captured and using junk science in order to push things on people that result in a profit for the makers of the junk. And people are seeing that. But then when it comes to climate change, they try to apply the same, the same context to something that has completely different context. The context is that the makers of the junk, which is the fossil fuels, and fossil fuels absolutely fuel every single other thing in our society, right? Our entire civilization is built on this cheap energy called fossil fuels. If you look at, over the last 200 years, right, like the, population, technology, advancements, all of this stuff, our entire civilization is built on the rise of the cheap fossil fuels. And when you take those cheap fossil fuels away, or the things that those cheap fossil fuels make, like chemical fertilizers, chemically made things, or things that run on fossil fuel, everything. There's fossil fuels in literally everything. I think everybody, when I was a child, there's an early science, some kind of, look, I remember being a child looking at something that said, fossil fuels are found in almost everything that you eat, use, or, whatever could possibly look at, right? Everything that you look at, everything you see, you look out and you say, all the things that humans make and do and eat and use and buy, there's fossil fuels in every single one of those things, right? Like, so you see how integral fossil fuels are to our civilization. And now we're at a point where we're going to pay the piper for these fossil fuels being the underpinning of literally everything that we do, even green energy. Fossil fuels are the underpinning of the green energy. We're at a point where we're going to pay the piper, and everybody's confused about what is that, people are super confused about what is actually happening, or what's going to happen, what is going to happen. That's the worst part, is people are just really confused about what's going to happen. And I was just thinking about a tweet I saw from somebody that I follow on Twitter saying, like, well, I see how they're lying to us about the science on everything else, so I'm just going to dump climate change in there too, right? And so a lot of people are in that boat. A lot of people are in the, well, I'll just put climate change in the, junk science category too, but that's just that's not what's happening. What's happening is all that junk science, all that, toxic technology that has been built on fossil fuels, and the fossil fuels themselves have led us to a place where we're destroying the planet. And that's another thing that people aren't getting either, is that I hear a lot of this commentary on independent media is that, well, I know we're hurting the planet. I know we're poisoning the planet and the wells and and the farmland and the I know we're poisoning everything, but that's different from climate change. It's not. It's not. That's you can't really. Again, that's an attempt to, still hold on to your narrative that climate change is a hoax or the CO2 doesn't cause warming, and it's just not. It's the entirety of the system that is causing environmental destruction. Yes, environmental destruction and climate change is the end result of environmental destruction. Right? You do something to a degree, to an extent to which you actually change how everything works, and that's climate change. That's exactly what climate change is. And you can't separate those things. You can't say you can, and people say it all the time, but well, I'm talking about environmental destruction. We know that's bad, but this climate change is a bunch of hooey. Well, no, it's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. You poison the land, you poison the food, you poison the fish, you poison the people. Why wouldn't you poison the air? In the same, right? But we're not, it's like we're poisoning all this thing and we're destroying all these things, but we're definitely not poisoning the air. We're definitely not putting things into the air that are going to alter the chemical makeup of the atmosphere to the point where things go awry. I mean, nice try. Nice try. I understand you're really grasping onto this. You want to hold on to this, but it's just not true. All right. But and the funniest thing about the climate change is a hoax trope is that this is something that's been pushed out for years by corporations, right? Big oil, fossil fuels. The same people that can see that Big Pharma is bad and Monsanto is bad, and all these corporations that are doing all the bad things. They can see that, but somehow when you get to fossil fuels, it's just it's a record scratch. It's like oh no, I don't see that at all. And it's the same on the other side, right? A lot of people that believe in climate change understand climate change, understand that fossil fuel companies, run the world, run everything that we do, absolutely control the narrative on every level, everywhere. Fossil fuels, they do that. The fossil fuel companies, they do that. Right? They understand that, but you get to, Big Pharma or other things, they're like, no, totally. They have our best interest in mind. Okay. So it's like confusion central. Okay, Phantomas, what's up, man? Phantomas is calling in on the call-in app.
Good afternoon.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I was thinking about what you were talking about and how the denial and all of this is coming to head and getting us into more and more discussion, but at the wrong types of things with a lot of people because of how this has been seeded for decades to confuse people.
Yeah.
And, I was watching footage of the Rolling Loud Festival. I was looking at all the phones across the audience and
right.
how they were all glowing. And the and then all of the spectacle of this stage, all the lights. And I mean, this isn't of all places in a place that should be conserving their energy.
Right.
And to me, I mean, if you think about the disasters when you have these festivals and just disasters in general, when you take this much energy and you put it out there, it's such a ridiculous premise that we live in, and there's no way to roll it back. There's an absolute, because we've taught people ultimately to be at party as much as you can, and you don't have to conserve nothing.
Earn all the money, buy all the things, do all the things that you possibly can. That's the that's been the marketing message for the last, I don't know, whatever, since the middle of the last decade, right? at least.
So I wanted to give you a heads up. There's an article I was just looking at in the BBC,
Uh-huh.
and it talks about how 30 years ago they
Yeah.
had the climate meeting. You read
Or
this article?
I don't know if it's the same one. The BBC just put out a documentary about how the fossil fuel industry.
Yeah, this is probably
This is different.
part of that. Yeah, this is probably part of that as well. I would say
Right.
it has something to do with the promotion of it, or something in that along those lines. But yeah, I mean, it goes back to we're always having the wrong discussion. Nobody on the Republican side really wants to have that discussion with us, and it's gonna harm them in the long run too. It's gonna harm all of their businesses.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, I don't see how it can't eventually.
I mean, for a lot of people who get into the business of disaster capitalism, like what Naomi Klein, going back to what Naomi Klein was teaching about, were telling us about like 10 or 15 years ago.
Right.
Right. I'm looking at this. I think that the fact that we can't have these discussions is more troubling than we can possibly conceive of in our minds. And I'm not sure what exactly the next step, what we do about that.
I don't either. I mean, I think the discussions are going on and they're going to start happening, but there's so much disinformation and resistance from a certain. I mean, it is a lockstep, wall-to-wall agreement by by so many people in the independent media that like climate change isn't real. They're making it up. It's not really happening. It's just all of it is a contrivance by the WEF, et cetera, right? And like that in itself makes me somewhat suspicious that it's completely lockstep. But it's gonna be difficult to get through that. But I mean, people are talking about it, so right, it is out there in the discussion area. I don't know if people are going to move into a better place around it. I don't know when is that going to happen? When is that going to take place? Right, when people can honestly go like, okay, I see this is going on, and now what are we going to do about this? Right, like what are we really going to do about this?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's obvious that the big businesses and the corporations have made their choice. So ultimately, what's left for us is the only one option, which is we got to start breaking up these corporations as much as we can, because they've clearly determined what direction they want to go in. And if that's the direction they want to go in, there's no other option but to break them all up, if that's the direction.
I mean, it's the only way. And you also have to. Well, like Roger Hallam was on a thing a year or two ago. This is like right before the pandemic, I guess. But I think it got kind of squashed by the pandemic. The pandemic squashed a lot of protest around climate change for a second. But he was like, the only way we're going to change anything is if we overthrow the government. And maybe that's true, but I think it is really the corporations, more than anything. Like, sure. I mean, I don't know. Overthrow in what way? I'd be more into, how do we get rid of the people who are bought and paid first, get them out of there, put in some rules in place that will keep, more honest actors, working on our behalf, doing the right things. But again, the corporations run everything and they own everybody. So.
One thing I wanted to mention before we left on a positive note, they just announced the first biodegradable vinyl.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know how true that is, but I guess it wouldn't be called vinyl, but they still want to market it as vinyl.
Green,
I don't know
green vinyl. Okay.
Yeah. I guess
that's cool. I'm a musician, so hey, that's kind of awesome. Can I get my record made on biodegradable vinyl?
I'll send you an article to it, and you can look at it later.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
Later.
Yeah. So Anyways, let's look at a couple things before it gets too late in the day. But this is what was being talked about in the chat. Early nuclear power plants are struggling to stay cool. So this is something that happened a few years ago when there was high temperatures in Europe. Several of the nuclear power plants had to shut down because the water was too warm. There were issues cooling the plants because the water was too warm. And also the water is getting lower. Why? Because of drought. Climate change is reducing output and raising safety concerns at nuclear facilities from France to the U.S., but experts say adapting is possible and necessary. Okay. Anyways, amidst a slow-burning heat wave that has killed hundreds and sparked intense wildfires across Western Europe, and combined with already low water levels due to drought, and that has been an ongoing thing. That didn't just pop up. That's not a, for you WEFers, that's not something that, oh, all of a sudden the water level's low, they're making this happen. No, this has been ongoing for a long time. I've been doing this for years. 3-4 years ago, I remember seeing articles about particular rivers in Europe running very, very low. Because they're losing their runoff, because the snowpack is melting and their aquifers are depleting and the runoff is getting lower and lower, so the rivers are getting lower and lower, and so they can't. There was an article I remember 3 years ago, something like that, where ships were not able to move through a particular part of particular river. I think it was the Rhine in Germany, because it was so low due to climate change. So this isn't like a brand new. Oh, they just made this happen. Anyways, combined with already low water levels due to drought, the Rhone, this is the Rhone, different river, the Rhone's water has gotten too hot for the job. It's no longer possible to cool reactors without expelling water downstream that's so hot as to extinguish aquatic life. So a few weeks ago, Électricité de France began powering down some reactors along the Rhone and a second major river in the south, the Garonne. That's by now a familiar story. Similar shutdowns due to drought and heat occurred in 2018 and 2019. I was just talking about that. The summer's cuts, combined with malfunctions and maintenance on other reactors, have helped reduce France's nuclear power output by nearly 50%. Of all the low-carbon energy sources that will likely be necessary to fight climate change, nuclear power is usually thought of as the least perturbable, but that is actually not true at all. The problem with nuclear power is exactly this. You can have weather events. You can have tsunamis. There was a flood in Omaha, Nebraska. There's a nuclear power plant in Omaha, Nebraska, a few years ago. The Mississippi, was it the Mississippi or maybe it was another river? There was such bad flooding, if you remember, a few years ago in the Midwest, or during, over a few years. There were several summers where there was horrendous flooding in the Midwest. But the floodwaters got so high, they almost overtook, they had sandbagged the perimeter of this nuclear power plant, but the floodwaters almost overtook what they built. And it almost flooded, and that would have been a disaster. That would have been meltdown. So nuclear power, not so much. Not so much. Not to mention the other obvious issues with nuclear power, but I mean, a lot of people like to say, well, nuclear power is the way to go. Meh, not so much. Not so much. Again, and if you find the perfect energy source to power, everybody being able to do all the things that they still do and consume all the things they still consume and do, right? Like fossil fuel energy powers a lot of environmental destruction, is my point. If you're like, get rid of the fossil fuels and let's go nuclear, the nuclear power is going to power a lot of environmental destruction. That's just what is going to happen. Unless everybody starts magically living, very, very low consumption lifestyles. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's maybe that's utopia, right? Everything runs on nuclear power, and everybody farms organic, and everything else is made out of hemp. Is that the vision that we have, that some people are cooking up? Everything is made of hemp and is biodegradable, and I don't know. Maybe there's a utopian path for us yet. I don't necessarily see it, but maybe. I'll never count anything out, I guess. Never say never until it really is never. Anyways, the problem is, so they're saying that, I don't know, this is kind of a 50-50 article about like, well, nuclear power seems like really good. But there's the thing when people say nuclear power, they actually don't take into account how many recently nuclear plants have been shut down because they're leaky, they're old, they're cracking, they're releasing radiation into the atmosphere, into the rivers, right? There are a lot of problems with nuclear power plants. Beyond even just, random weather event happens, then they melt down, which is super bad, which is what you don't want. But a lot of nuclear power plants have shut down recently and been shut down because they carry with them a lot of danger. A lot of danger. And potential environmental destruction, right? Anyways. We haven't really quite gotten that one right yet. Something else I wanted to go to. So yeah, the BBC. Oh. Well, here's a couple of things I wanted to check out here. The BBC just put out a documentary. Oh no, this is different. We'll get to that. From Kevin Pluck, every trillion a year is $1.8 million a minute. So this is a graph saying the oil and gas industry has delivered $1 trillion in profit a year on average. $1 trillion a year. And that's, if you go back through the years, adjusted for, what it's worth today. The vast total captured by petrostates and fossil fuel companies since 1970 is $52 trillion, providing the power to buy every politician, every system, and delay action on the climate crisis. And that is exactly what they've done. So it's actually the inverse of what people think, what a lot of independent media type people think. When it comes to climate change, the inverse of what you think it is true. So they think that the scientists have all been paid for in order to tell you that climate change is a thing. No, the thing that's happening. I'm speaking to the choir right now, but if anybody, I get random people that wander in and decide they want to listen to what I have to say. But the truth is that the fossil fuel industry has paid scientists to downplay the evidence, to downplay the threat. And on top of all that, pushed out climate denialism, articles and the guy that was on CNN that I played yesterday, that was absolutely a fossil fuel industry fueled appearance on CNN, right? They want people to be unsure. They want people to be skeptical. I don't know. Is climate change really a thing? That was on purpose. Why? Because if you have, most of the people doubting whether it's really a thing or not even understanding what's going on, you can just continue doing what you're doing, and nobody's going to, say, "Hey, I think that we should stop this," which is what most climate scientists say. Hey, I think that we should stop this. That is the message of, the vast majority of climate scientists, and the ones that are outside the box are not saying, hey, they're not, the whistleblowers are not the ones that are saying this is a hoax. The whistleblowers are the ones that are saying we are screwed. They're trying to tell us that we have until 2100, and we're telling you we've got until 2030. That's what the whistleblower climate scientists are trying to tell you. It is way worse than they're letting you know. But they've muddied up the waters and screwed up the message and diluted the message of could be a real bad thing in the future. They've done that. Who's done that? The fossil fuel industry, right? The corporations, the bad guys, the same as Big Pharma and Monsanto and GMO, right? The chemical makers, DuPont, right? The fossil fuel industry, the bad guys. They're the bad guys, right? I want you to understand that because people just don't get it. The end result of the bad guys running the show is we screwed up the joint, and we screwed it bad. We screwed up the joint, we screwed it bad, and now it's, because the same independent media people have just like absolutely locked into this trope, it's going to be even harder to actually get people to understand what's going on until things get so bad that they're going to be like, oh geez, oh sorry, that it's going to look like the graph, the graph that's like global warming's a long way off, and then you get to the next part of the graph and it's like, oh, it's real, but it's not real. Climate is always changing, and the very end of the graph is like red, which says fuck, and then the last one is a little tiny yellow oops, and the entirety of independent media is going to get to the oh fuck and then oops part. It won't really matter at that point. But that's the reality of what's going on, and the reality is everywhere if you want to actually pay attention. As the other painful thing to watch is like independent media types trying to talk about climate change and just completely cherry picking like one piece of evidence about temperatures or something. It's like, you're going to need a little more than that. But we are in the age of the great confusion, and it's probably going to get worse. What else is going on here? Yeah, and then the other thing I wanted there is I haven't watched it yet. I just saw this post, but I guess there's a documentary out. Just basically talking about how the fossil fuel industry knew. They did, they had scientists check out the climate, the CO2, science, and they're like, yep, this is definitely going to happen. The Army checked out the CO2 science. They're like, yep. Oh yeah. Totally happening. What are we going to do in the face of this? Let's lie our asses off and say it's not really a thing because we need the money to keep coming in, right? It's like the tobacco industry. Well documented, right? The tobacco industry absolutely knew that their products killed people. And they went to great lengths in order to hide that information in order to keep poisoning people, in order to keep their profits coming. This is on a grander scale, right? This is about poisoning the entire planet. So, kind of different in that way. But I don't know. I guess I'm gonna watch this eventually when I don't have time to do anything. So hopefully soon I will be able to watch this documentary. Not that I don't know what they're gonna say already. I already know the whole story. I'll be watching a documentary going, yep, mm-hmm, yeah, we already knew that. Mm-hmm. Okay, tell me more. I knew that. Okay, this is all right. Well, let's look at this from Jordan Perry. Jordan Perry, always good for a chuckle at climate collapse in the climate collapse field. I'm known to suggest that Homo colossus lacks the evolutionary smarts to change course. I was wrong, dead wrong. We got this, people. So he's linking an article that says that drought drives Las Vegas to cap the size of home swimming pools. That's going to do it. Problem solved. I mean, they're doing stuff like that in LA around the drought. And it's always kind of funny to me a little bit that they're like, well, you only get to water your lawn a couple times a week. I'm like, do you need to water your lawn more than a couple times a week? What are you doing? Like, I don't know. It's kind of funny to me, but you know, whatever. That's where we are. This is from. But yeah, I mean, Jordan Perry is pointing out the absolute lack of understanding of the situation, and that's where we're at. That's where we're at. Is just a lot of people just running around with just zero understanding of the entirety of the situation, zero context of what's really going on, and then, you know, going about their day. This is swallowed whole. A van disappears after falling into a sinkhole. I can't read today. I'll start from the beginning. Swallowed whole. A van disappears after falling into a sinkhole in the Bronx, New York, after severe storms. What? Storms hit the city. Again, I heard, someone from independent media saying, "Oh, they said that we're going to get all the hurricanes and the bad storms and the things." I don't see it. I'm like, where? Are you alive? Are you alive? You're just not paying attention to the things that you don't want to pay attention to. That's fine. I mean, people only have so many hours in the day, I guess. That's pretty wild footage. But yeah, I mean, there's massive flooding there was massive flooding in New York City, massive storms. There were these massive king tides in Hawaii, which I showed the other day. Just out of control. Just like, how is this even possible, right? Like that level of like, whoa. I mean, waves coming over a 2-story condominium, like that level of like, what? How is this even possible to fathom? And meanwhile, someone in independent media going, I don't see anything anywhere. You're looking real high and real low there for evidence that nothing is going on, I guess. Which doesn't take a lot of work because you just don't have to look. You just say, I don't see it. I don't see it at all. Let's call it investigative journalism. Let's see. Something else. I just can't seem to make it through my shows much. I can't cover all the things I want to cover. I have all these items I want to bring up, and I just don't have the time. Anyways, the Coal Baron Blockade is a group, an ecologically climate change action group that I've never heard of, but this is kind of cool. They're going to shut down the congressional baseball game. Awesome. I'm all for this. And there's a link. I guess you can sign a petition or something, and I think I'll drop it for you guys. But this is the Coal Baron Blockade at West Virginia Rising. So they're anti-Manchiners. Remember, the Democrats didn't have a Republican majority to cry about blocking their climate change agenda, so they had to push another Democrat who was basically a Republican into the fray to go, yeah, I'll do it. I'll deny you your climate change legislation. Nod, nod, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more. Right? And then they go, oh, we can't do it, right? Because the Democrats are communists and socialists, and they just want to push this crazy climate change agenda on you. They don't. They actually don't. If you're actually paying attention, they don't. They don't want to do that. They're actually, they have fossil fuel donors. The fossil fuel donors say, you can just do a little bit of climate change thing. You can talk about it a little bit, but you know where the money comes from, and you know where your bread is buttered. So don't you be doing any climate change agenda stuff, right? Remember when Obama was, the last president that supposedly cared about climate change? What did he do? Ramp up the fracking. Ramp up domestic oil production. Allowed a bunch of, oil wells to be started, drilled. Yeah, that's Obama. That's your climate change guy. Which he was not. Okay, so if you're paying attention, if you are playing the, investigative journalist bingo card, and you're actually looking at the issue, you will understand that the oil companies want you confused, and they totally have done a great job, and good job on you for completely taking the bait. Anyways, they're going to shut down the congressional baseball game. 200 plus have already signed up. We need to at least double in size to have a good chance of shutting it down. Please tell everyone you know we would not ask it if it was not important. A bit about us. We are a new volunteer-led collective of ordinary people scared as hell about the impending climate collapse when not a single other group was willing to lead a direct action to stop Manchin. We organized hundreds to blockade the power plant that burns his coal. Great. Awesome. Next week, we will shut down the congressional baseball game. For all that you love, for all that is sacred, for all that is good in the world, we ask you to stand with us. If you can make it, let us know. And I will, I'll link the website in the chats. This is called nowornever.earth. Okay. I think I can do it here. Okay, yeah, I linked it. Did I get it into the Rockfin chat? I think maybe I did. Did I? Did I? There we go. Linked it in the Rockfin chat. Anyways, quickly kind of running out of time. Oh, this is a wild video. Well, first of all, we'll go to this. This is, again, more evidence that nothing is really going on the planet. In the Persian Gulf, this is insane. Like, think about this. The most humid place on Earth, the Persian Gulf, has scorching the water temperature. The temperatures are as high as 95 Fahrenheit, 95 degree water. The capital of Qatar, located along the Persian Gulf, currently has a mind-blowing feels-like temperature of 126 at midnight. Next level, imagine how humid it is there. 126. It's a feels-like temperature. So I don't know what the actual temperature is. I'm assuming that is, whatever the actual temperature is plus the humidity. Feels like 126. Professor Elliot Jacobson says so close to lethal wet bulb. So yeah, and then someone else says, I was just about to check that too. I wonder how long it'll be before somewhere in the world passes that threshold for long enough to kill in large numbers. And that will be the point at which it stops becoming like a joke, right? That it stops becoming like, oh, haha, it's, they're saying the heat waves are killing people. It's not that hot. Until, it gets to a point where people are just falling out from the heat. And I wonder if we'd even really get real information on that. I wonder if the powers that be would. So, and here's the other thing about the inverse being true of climate change, compared to other subjects, is that, right, they've muddied the waters. They've tried to tell you that this thing isn't really happening for so long, and now that it's here, everybody's like, oh, they're just making it up, or it's just they're making these things happen. All these weather events are all fake. Everything is fake. Everything's fake. Everything's fake. And they're even, on some levels, nobody's talking about UV, right? Nobody's even reporting on that. So, and we know that's it going on. So that's, there is information control on the side of we don't want people to know really how bad things are. When it's convenient for us, right? If things are really, really hairy. I don't know. Would you even know if a bunch of people really, fell out due to massive amounts of heat? I don't know. Maybe we would know. Maybe we wouldn't. Who knows? Last thing I'll leave you with is this pretty crazy video. Near Cromwell, Oklahoma, there's a shot of a wind turbine that got struck by lightning, and it's kind of cool looking. It's a little scary, to a little end of the worldy. Man, maybe I got to make my show longer because I can't even talk about all the stories I want to talk about. I get stuck on like 3 or 4 stories. But this is a wind turbine that got struck by lightning. I don't know. Just something a little crazy to watch. One of the blades is on fire and it's spinning around and creating like a smoke trail. And how's that for dystopian? Oh, now the whole thing is catching on fire. Now the whole thing is catching on fire. Yeah, very grim. It's a very grim looking thing. Um, yeah, I may have to do just longer shows or something, or organize my, or just stop wanting to talk about so many things. Maybe I should just realize that I only have time for like a few things. And I'll leave you with that. All right, guys, thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. I appreciate you all hanging out with me every day on Rockfin, on YouTube, and on Callin. And you can support me at the link, that Cash App link that you see on your screen. That is the best possible way to support the channel. And I appreciate all the supporters of the channel. Thank you. Every little bit helps. And I'll see you tomorrow at the regular time of 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Until next time, peace.